010101001 here, and today we are going to be taking a quite detailed sorry about that look at a Dell Latitude X1 netbook from 2004 or 2005. So let's get started. This netbook is just your typical mid-range netbook from the early mid-2000s. This netbook has a 30 gigabyte 1.2 or 1.3 inch hard drive, ATA 5, so IDE, with a ZIF connector on the end. We will be taking a look at that ZIF connector in more detail later on in the video. This machine is equipped with 512 megabytes of RAM. 256 megabytes is soldered directly to the motherboard, and then you have another 256 megabytes has been added into the system from the factory by means of a DDR2 expansion slot, which again we will be taking a look at later on in the video. This netbook does not have an operating system on it because I had to wipe the drive. That reason will be discussed in another video. What is under this rug? Oh, it's a screw. So yeah, this netbook here is kind of low end. It has a 12.5 or 12.6 inch XGA display. That's right, XGA. It has a keyboard here. There is no numpad on the side, number keypad on the side. It has a fairly small touchpad or trackpad. I estimate this to be about 1.5, about an inch and a half horizontal. And very small but very audible click buttons with some tactile feedback. It also has an SD card slot in it for full-size SD cards. Micro SD cards can be used with the use of an adapter. Here on the front, right here, we have our power light, our battery light, Bluetooth. Yes, that's right, this machine has Bluetooth, hard disk activity indicator light, scroll lock light, caps lock light, and num lock light. All the keys are laid out in a typical configuration, including your forward/ and / keys, your enter key, your shift key, your Windows key, and your delete key. Same for your home, end, and insert keys. Now, on the side here, we have 56K. We have a port. Let me zoom in on this. We have a phone. We have a phone jack right here. That is connected to a 56K modem, 10100 Ethernet, USB 2.0, and a CF card slot. And now on the other side we have analog out, analog in, 1394 FireWire, USB 2.0, don't know what this is, but it's probably an expansion connector for an expansion product that would be provided by Dell. Optimally purchased at the time of the purchase of the netbook. standard 15-pin VGA video out, and a DC power jack for charging the computer. Now, the top of the machine is the top of the computer, and just simply has your Dell logo on it. Turning around to the back of the machine, there are no expansion slots or connectors on the back of the machine for facilitating any type of communication. Now, if we turn this thing over, we get a plethora of connectors and a Windows XP license key, which you can't have. Thank you very much. Our battery here is on the bottom, and it does not have a charge. If we eject the battery, you can see that there is a button here for checking the charge of the battery. As you can see, this battery has practically no charge in it as I am pressing this button. There is very little tactile or audible feedback. And there's a strike zone thing here for I don't know what reason. There are no covers on the bottom of this machine for the hard drive, memory, CPU, or anything. And there's an interesting thing about the cooling solution Dell chose to use for this machine, as we will see later on in the video. Now, if we turn this machine back over and open it back up, you might be wondering where the power button is. Because, I mean, you have a keyboard, a trackpad, click buttons, and your indicator lights, but you don't see the power button. Well, guess what? It's over here on the side, right here. Now, this machine does not have a charge in the battery, so therefore it is not powering up. This machine also has a lid switch that prevents the machine from powering up cold if the lid is closed, as I will now demonstrate. So let's go ahead and plug in our DC power. As you can see, the battery is beginning to charge, as indication of the battery light here lighting up. So we will now attempt to power on the machine with the lid closed. As you can see, I am firmly pressing the button, but nothing is happening. But as soon as we lift up the lid and press the button, the machine comes to life. Now, this computer has an Intel Centrino processor, which is pretty much just another name for an Intel Pentium M processor. M stands for mobile. This computer had Microsoft Windows XP on it, but again, that operating system was wiped, and that situation will be described in another video of mine. So let's go ahead, connect DC power to the machine, and just boot this thing up. Now, again, this is an XGA display that uses CCFL lighting. So the display is going to be very dim upon first power up. I have set a password on this machine. Sorry. I have set a hard disk. I have set a password on this machine. So therefore, I am going to shut the lens cover, and I will now reboot the machine. Press F2 to get into setup, enter the password, unlock the BIOS, and then we can start exploring this machine. I'll just have to power this thing off and back up. Okay, preparing to enter setup. Sorry about that. Taking a long time to post for some reason. Password. Let the camera focus, and there we go. Now that we have the BIOS unlocked and the machine now in setup, we can begin to take a look at what this machine had to offer for the time. So let's begin. Feel free to look up the service tag on this machine as desired. I have not looked up the service tag on this machine yet, but I will be doing that after I conclude the filming of this video. So system, Latitude X1, BIOS version, A02, released April 5th, 2005. Our service tag is 47MWP71. There is no asset or ownership tag. None of these fields are changeable. Processor info. We have a Pentium M processor. Processor ID is 06D6. Our current clock speed is 1.10 GHz, which is the maximum clock speed supported by this processor. These Dell machines always run the processor at their maximum clock speed when in the BIOS before handing off control to the operating system, if one is present at the time. The minimum clock speed this processor will operate at is 600 MHz. The maximum clock speed is, you guessed it, 1.10 GHz or 1100 MHz. This processor has 2 MB of L2 cache and is not capable of hyperthreading. Again, none of these fields are changeable. Memory info. 512 MB operating at 400 MHz. This memory is operating in single channel mode, and it is DDR2 SRAM. None of these fields are changeable. Primary hard drive. 30 GB hard disk drive. Again, ZIF connector and using only the 3.3 volt rail for all power. There is no D-Bay device connected to this machine at the time. Video controller. Intel 915 GMS graphics. Video BIOS version is 12.05, and there is 8 MB of video memory assigned to the controller. This video memory is deducted from the available memory from the total memory installed in this machine. There is no separate video memory. Panel type: 12.1 inch wide XDA display. Maximum native resolution is 1280 by 768. Audio controller is a Sigmatel 9752 audio controller, and apparently there is no modem controller present in the machine. The mini PCI device currently installed in this machine is an Intel wireless device, and Bluetooth is currently present and enabled. AC adapter, and there is an AC adapter connected to this machine at this time, and none of these fields are changeable. Battery info. There is only one battery capable of being installed in this machine, and it is currently charging. It is 33% charged at this time. Date and time. Sunday, February 12th, 2017 at 8:41 a.m. Now, something interesting about this. You actually have to set the time in 12-hour format. Because there's a PM/AM thing over here. If you try to do 22, you cannot enter 2200 something as a time. So it is 9. Now, changes to the date and time take effect immediately. You do not have to reboot the system to save the date and time. Boot sequence. We have this machine supports booting from a 3.5-inch, 1.44 megabyte diskette drive. The internal hard drive. This machine also supports booting from a USB storage device and a CD, DVD, CDRW drive. Onboard NIC. Booting from the onboard LAN controller is disabled, and I'm also going to be disabling this diskette drive and the CD drive. Internal HDD is going up to the top, and there we go. Onboard devices. Integrated NIC. It is currently enabled at this time. Mini PCI status. Enabled. Modem is currently disabled at this time. Video. Brightness. Maximum. Brightness on AC power. Maximum. LCD panel expansion or the VGA port on the machine. Enabled at this time. Security. Setup is currently unlocked at this time. You can set an administrator password, a system password, and an internal hard drive password. And this also travels with the hard drive, so if you place this drive into another machine, you will not be able to access the data on it until you enter the correct password. Password changes are denied unless you have entered the administrator password. TPM, security and activation are disabled at this time. Power management. Auto on mode is currently off. Auto on time not set. Speed step is currently enabled because this processor does support speed step technology. Wake on LAN is currently disabled at this time. Maintenance. Load defaults. If you press enter and hit continue, you will load all setup defaults. Host behavior. Function key emulation. That is handled by scroll lock when using an external keyboard. Fast boot. Minimal, thorough, or auto. Keypad. Embedded. By function key only or by numlock. I am going to be changing that back to function key only. Numlock LED. On. At this time. USB emulation is currently enabled at this time. Wireless. The final section. Wireless control is handled by function plus F2 by holding the function key and pressing F2. The wireless device installed in this machine is currently on. The Bluetooth device installed in this machine is currently on, and we have now reached the end of the setup section for this machine. I'm going to now this machine does things a tad bit differently. You can't just hit F10 and exit setup. You have to press escape. And you can also do something that you can't do on ordinary machines. You can hold Alt and you can press F4 as if you were going to close an application, and it will bring you to the exit menu. I'm going to hit save and exit, and the machine should reset itself. Now, let's begin the disassembly phase. Whoa, focus. I'm going to unplug DC power from this machine. Let's readjust the camera. And let's readjust the camera. And we are now going to begin the disassembly phase of this machine, which we will now start by first turning the machine over, moving these two latches out to the side, and removing the battery. Now that the battery has some charge, we can now successfully demonstrate the battery charge indicator function. This battery is between 40 and 60% charged at this time. We are just going to quietly set this aside. Retrieve our small Phillips head screwdriver, which I am now going to retrieve from my room. Okay. Hold on. Yes, I'm busy making video. What? Oh, no, not yet. Okay. What? What? Yes, ma'am. You're welcome. Okay, I'm gonna have to take my dog Landon outside. Okay, so I am back. And my dad is going to the playroom. And now we have the sound of a garage door opening. So I don't know what he's doing. And then I think he's pulling his truck in. Let me go shut the playroom door. I don't know why I still call it a playroom, because it really even isn't. Yeah, we can now begin the disassembly phase of this machine. Zoom in. So we can begin by taking our screwdriver and removing all the screws on the bottom of the machine. This is important if you want to actually get the machine apart. Now, this netbook is not worth refurbishing and selling, because I mean it only supports a maximum of 1 gigabyte DDR2 and decent capacity ATA5 drives with ZIF connectors on the end are just not here, and if there is, they are ridiculously expensive. Like, I mean, these netbooks were made for their time, and that's about it. Like they're not meant to serve today's duties unless you're really light duty on these machines. Like, I mean, the disc was almost full whenever I wiped it. and the Dell Latitude, not Dell Latitude, the Dell Inspiron 1150s I'm going to be reviewing soon. I'm going to be going over soon is have 40 gigabyte true laptop IDE drives. Again, DDR2, but those things actually support a half decent amount of RAM. Let's see. Now, after all the screws have been removed from the bottom of the machine, we need to flip the computer over, open the display, and then take a small flathead screwdriver and carefully pry. Fold the display all the way back and carefully pry up on these two covers. Remove them and set them off to the side. Also using the flathead screwdriver, carefully pry the keyboard up. This keyboard should easily come loose, and then you can fold it up and fold it up, unlock the latch for the keyboard and cable, remove the keyboard, and safely set it off to the side. Now, for the display, first thing you should do is locate the display connector, which is right here. Take a small flathead screwdriver and gently pry up on this cable. Remove the cable, and now take your Phillips head screwdriver and unscrew the two screws holding the display to the computer. Now that the screws are out, you may now lift the computer. You may now loosen the display, but there are two more cables to disconnect from the computer before you can remove the display. And these are the Wi-Fi antenna cables. You just simply pull it up like this, grab one side with one hand, and just pull apart. Now you can safely remove the display from the computer and set it off to the side. Now, this is where things get interesting. I am going to remove the cover for the memory. And now I am going to unlatch the memory from the machine and remove it. This is a 256 megabyte stick of RAM. There is an additional 256 megabytes on the board, soldered directly to the motherboard. And this is DIMM A, and this is only compatible with DDR2 memory. Now for the hard disk. The cover has 4 screws, and these 4 screws are permanently attached to the cover. Just loosen the screws, remove the cover, and then use a small flathead screwdriver and pry up. Then you can use this blue pull tab, loosen the back end of the drive, and then just remove the drive from its spot. Then use the blue pull tab and pull back to disconnect the drive. Now this is a 30 gigabyte Toshiba hard drive. Feel free to pause the video here and take a look at all the information here on the cover. Now this is a small 1.2 or 1.3 inch hard disk. Now take a look at the connector. This is not your ordinary IDE connector. This is an ATA5 ZIF connector. And the back and the platters on this drive are extraordinarily small. Here's the area where the platters are, and this is where the spindle motor is. So yeah, you have to be extraordinarily careful with this drive. This drive also cannot fit within the CF card slot. Now for the CPU and GPU. Dell decided to use a passive cooling solution for the CPU and GPU. These 4 screws are not attached to the heatsink. So these screws can be removed and have to be set aside for removal of this cover. Now after that, you can just take a fingernail and then pry up and remove the cover. Now, this is the top of the cover. There's a little copper heat pipe here. Now look at the other side. This is where the CPU goes. This is where the GPU goes. Though there are thermal pads that facilitate heat transfer to this heatsink. There is a copper pipe that interconnects this plate and the rest of the heatsink. Now, this machine actually uses an external GPU. This is the CPU right here. And this is the GPU. The CPU runs cooler than the GPU. Now, I don't know why Dell chose to use passively cooled, because it runs hot. These run hot. But then again, it's worked for the past 11 or 12 years. Like, I mean, I can't blame Dell. Like, this works. This just works. Now, to remove this top palm rest piece, you have to remove a single screw that goes here. Then, you can now carefully pry up. And remove the said palm rest from the machine. Now there is still the touchpad cable that is attached. So you need to be careful when doing this. Now I always start up here around this area. And then I just let this undo itself by gently prying up. And then there's a single latch down here. You just need to undo this latch. And then you can pull the touchpad cable out, remove the palm rest, and set it aside. Now this right here is the 56K modem, and this is a wireless card. And this must be the wireless card, and then that must be Bluetooth. And
time to wash hands.
Okay. Breakfast time. So, what was I talking about again? Let's see. I think I was about to remove a part. Yeah, the modem. That's what we were talking about. So yeah, this is our 56K dial-up modem that interfaces with the phone jack on the side. So removing it is as simple as removing a couple of screws and then pulling up. Screw 1. Here's screw 2. And then pull up on this. Disconnecting the cable, and there we go. So this is our modem. You press down on this part which facilitates installation of the modem. Do not remove protective cover. And then apparently it's a connexent modem, but it is 56K. So let me just set that aside. And then this wire here interfaces with the phone jack. It's a two-line jack. And then this right here is our CR2032 battery with and a covering, and it has a wire on the end. I'm not going to unplug that because I'll reset settings, but you know. And then here's our wireless card. This is the auxiliary line, main line, and removing it is as simple as unplugging these two connectors, and then undoing those two latches, and then removing it from the mini PCI slot. Let's see, it is a Dell, wait, it's an Intel, yeah, it's an Intel wireless and Bluetooth card. It was made 2005. May 12th, 2005. And then, certified, and then, whoops. Let's see. Certified by Anatel, NTC type accepted. Yeah, just set this aside, and then that must be wireless only, and then this must be and then that must be the item that facilitates Bluetooth communication, and removing it is as simple as just unplugging this connector, removing this screw. And then just lifting it up and pulling it out. And focus. Here it is. I don't exactly know what this does. So yeah. And then here is our SD card reader. Remove the protective thing. Don't know how that wasn't lost. Removing it. As simple as removing a couple screws and almost breaking the motherboard in the process. Let me see. Okay. What do we have here now? What's going on? There's a little connector down here around this area, and it's a very tight fit. Let me see some here. And then removing the motherboard, unplug the speaker. Now this is the only speaker here. It does postcode beeps and stuff from the BIOS, and it's also for regular sound from like an operating system or something. But removing the motherboard is as simple as undoing these screws. There's actually a CMOS reset jumper. One screw, 2, 3, 4 screws. Okay. 5. This is it. And you also need to unplug this ribbon cable that connected the hard disk. I think it looks to be a 50 pin. It's a 50 pin connector. Let me see. What else? Oh yeah, unplugging the power button from the machine.
Hey, now y'all listen to this kid right here. He's pretty smart.
Yeah, I'm gonna be cutting that part out. Yeah, that was my dad. Loves to do things in my videos. Oh my gosh! I've never had a power jack that was so hard to remove. Oh hey, here's another screw. Okay, now it's just a matter of somehow unplugging this connector without breaking it. Fold this up out of the way. I think it broke that. There we go. Now the motherboard is out. Yeah. Yeah, there's 256 megabytes of memory soldered directly to the motherboard here. Because on this side it just simply says DIMM A, use DDR2 only. And on the other side we have four in final and memory chips. Each is 64 megabytes apiece, because 64 times 4 is 256, because 64 times 2 is 128 times 2 is 256. And removing this SD card thing, you have to pull out 2 screws here, the motherboard, and then undo this screw. So I'm just gonna turn this over and do that real quick. And there we go. So yeah, here's the SD card module. And this is just a mock-up SD card. And it is supposed to latch into place. Can be pulled out, but you can easily put it back in and unlatch it. Yeah, interesting. And then reassembly is performing all these steps in reverse, which I am now going to do. I have just completed the reassembly process of this machine and just tested it, and yes, it still does work. Though the battery does not, though the machine is not really worth refurbishing or saving or anything. I already have an Acer Aspire. I think it's a D150 netbook that's much more capable than this machine. This machine only supports a maximum of 1 gigabyte of DDR2 memory. And it uses a 1.1 gigahertz non-upgradable Pentium M processor, and it's just not worth saving. Though the SD card thing is quite a nice little feature for netbooks, considering how so many desktops these days just no longer include any means of reading these types of cards, despite them being one of the most popular flash media storage formats. Unless you get an external card reader or something. And even then, fewer and fewer and fewer computers and computer cases these days offer 5¼ inch or even expansion bays, and they've pretty much done away with all the 3.5-inch expansion bays. I actually had to get a 5¼ inch to a 3.5-inch expansion bay adapter for my main computer case whenever I changed cases to fit the card reader. It's getting crazy these days. But I mean, this computer really isn't worth saving. But I mean, it does. But I mean, it does work. But I mean, it does work. It's actually a lot brighter on camera than what it really is. Let me go ahead and type in the password. There we go. And if we just simply exit setup, no boot sector on internal hard drive, no bootable devices, strike F1 to retry boot, F2 for setup utility. But yeah, that's about as far as this machine's going to get unless I connect some bootable media to it. But yeah. So yeah. It just isn't worth saving. But this is a Computer Geek 0101010001 here.